I'll never fall into this boat of shaming men for having small social circles. I'll never fall into this boat of shaming men for not having a lot of friends and being single. Because I see way too many men nowadays getting in relationships, being around people who aren't even their real friends, just out of insecurity, just so they're not alone because they're not at peace with themselves being alone. You have to ask yourselves, these people that seem so happy on the surface level, they're a lot of the times the most miserable ones deep down because they're doing things for all the wrong reasons. Like, I know so many men who are in relationships, who have been in relationships, that overlook a bunch of red flags. They start taking disrespect. They start getting walked all over. And every time it backfires, but they're miserable. In their personal lives, in their private lives, they're miserable. And even after the relationship, they're miserable. They start to develop a disdain against women because of the toxicity. And it's just crazy how there's a lot of this pressure and shame towards single men for not being in relationships, when it's like you have to ask yourself, why would someone compromise their self-respect and self-restraint, by the way, which is part of being masculine, just to say they're in a relationship? That's living for other people's approval, not your own well-being. You know, the other thing I see too is this whole happy wife, happy life thing, which I've seen done a lot of damage on people because, again, they seem to misunderstand dynamics. They seem to misunderstand masculine frame, leadership. Like, I used to sell stuff on Facebook Marketplace. There's been countless times where I'm about to meet with a person. Last minute they say, oh, my wife isn't okay with me doing this. My wife isn't okay with me spending the money. My wife is not okay with me going and getting something to treat myself. Like, look, I can understand if it was a mutual thing, like a dinner table for the family. Sure, you'd want to get the wife and kids' opinion. But when it's something for yourself, you shouldn't have your own happiness deterred just for someone else. And it happens nonstop. These men get walked all over. Like, I have a lot of friends of mine who are in relationships or have been in relationships, and they'll be in the car with me, and like, I overhear the conversations on the phone with them and their girlfriend. And just the disrespectful, demanding tone. The girl hangs up the phone on them literally every time. And I'm like, these men are taking disrespect on a daily basis just to say that they're in a relationship, or just because in a lot of cases they can't handle being alone. Which really gets me to my point, is that people seem to not even understand what a real healthy friendship or relationship even looks like. It's not just about filling an empty void because you're insecure, because you can't handle being by yourself. The times I've been alone are some of the times where I've made the most progress in my life, where I really was on my grind, where I really was locked in. I didn't have these kind of distractions or derailments, and that's my point with the happy wife, happy life stuff, with people who are haters. If you're going to surround yourself with those people, they're just going to derail you from your mission and purpose. And it's crazy too, even with friendships. Like, I've had many people that they'll call you bro, they'll shake your hand, they'll dab you up. You'll even know their family and people close to them. But deep down, they're just haters. They don't want to see you do well. They might want to act like they want to see you do well up into a certain baseline, which that baseline usually being where they're at in life. They don't want to see you do beyond them in a lot of cases. I mean, that's again why I think it's good to be close with your family, why it's good to be close with your parents. When I hear a lot of this talk of being out of the house at 18 and going across the country and going across the state, again, some weird societal pressure, understand something that's not normal in most parts of the world. But your father, your biological father, or even stepfather, are some of the few people, perhaps the only person in your life, a man, who is going to get genuine joy out of seeing you do better than them, out of seeing you growing up with in a better predicament than they did. You know, and I understand there are some cases where I've heard of toxic family members, and it's a shame. But for the most part, that's the truth. Your father is one of the only people who is going to get genuine joy out of seeing you do better than them. That's why I'm so against a lot of the distancing yourself from family. Like, I even have a friend of mine from India who I knew from the gym. And I think he's in his 40s, but he lives with his mom. He cares for her, right? He takes care of her. And there was a girl he was talking to, and she basically said, "Oh, I'm not coming over and hanging out with you because your mom's in the house." I'm like, so you expect this man to put you, a girl he's only known for a number of weeks, over his own mother who brought him into this world, who raised him, took care of him when he was sick as a kid. You expect him to drop that and put you above her. I mean, how entitled are some women nowadays? That's crazy to me. How entitled are some people? And I see a lot of men making that mistake. They get with a girl who they've only known for a number of weeks or months, and all of a sudden they drop their mission and purpose. They've dropped spending time with friends and family that they've known their whole life. And they wonder why they're getting disrespected in their relationships. They wonder why the dynamics are so off. I mean, it's just totally backwards. Like even one of the last girls who I talked to, who I was going to go on a date with, I met her at a memorial. And I touched on this in a previous video. Sadly, one of my friends passed away at the age of 30. He was doing things to his body that he shouldn't have been doing. I'll put it that way. But I met this girl at the memorial. She hit me up on Instagram and we were talking. I was going to meet up with her, but I blew off those plans because I came to find out that she was in a relationship with a man who was in the army. He was not in the country at the moment. She was at his apartment, driving his car and taking care of his daughter, which, by the way, was not her daughter. And I'm like, why would any man settle for a woman like that? And even with the hookup culture stuff, because I know a lot of men who struggle with lust, who have struggled with lust, and they acknowledge that problem. You know, I talk to them about that and try to help them, but they acknowledge that it's an issue. But even if you're into that kind of stuff, why would you reduce yourself? Why would you make a fool of yourself of doing anything with a woman like that? I mean, it's crazy to me, especially with relationships. You see some of the red flags. If she's doing that to that man, why would you expect her to do any differently? She's going to do the same to you, bro. Like, that's the truth. It's just wild how, you know, we have, and again, me and a lot of men have these kind of conversations about dating traditional women and that kind of stuff. And my thing is this. What I've come to conclude is that if it's not going to lead to anything serious, if it's not a girl that I could see myself introducing to my parents or marrying or having raised my kids down the line, it's a waste of time. And even a lot of the guys I know who are, you know, going to raves and going to nightclubs and getting with girls and all that kind of stuff, they at least acknowledge, like, that's a waste of time. They know that. Again, everyone has their vices. No one's perfect, but they at least are humble enough, at least when they talk to me about it, they're humble enough to acknowledge that it is a waste of time. That's why you see a lot of men that are going to stay single. Like another time, most recently, the date I went on, I met this girl, and again, I was making plans of, hey, let's meet this time at this place. And she wanted to go in and change stuff, to like challenge me or take the lead and that kind of stuff. And it's crazy because you almost have to be like toxic in a way just to have the dynamics be somewhat normal in a relationship. Again, it shouldn't have to be that way. Like, I don't want to have to be crazy and super this and that. You should be able to just be masculine, be stoic, be normal, and not have to play these hurdles and games. Like, she's just trying to test me or whatever that was, but she wanted to meet like 7 hours earlier at a different place. And then when I finally did end up getting to meet with her, it was almost like you were talking to a man, like someone trying to be a father figure. It was not feminine at all. And believe me, guys, I'm someone that is on their masculine frame. I'm not someone who's going to compromise and be disrespected and walk all over. So why would I be in a relationship with someone like that? And that's such a common occurrence nowadays. You know, even when me and my friends will talk about where to meet good women, because again, I don't want to be pessimistic. I want to be living in reality. But I of course I do think there's good women out there. I know people who are happily married and stuff like that. But my point being is that a lot of the times people talk about places like college, which I'm not of college age anymore. They talk about libraries, church, and that kind of stuff, which is great. I'm all for it. But even in those settings, you still have to have your guard up. You still have to have very good discernment. There was a girl who I was talking to when I was in university, And some of the stuff coming out of her mouth, I'm telling you, the most vulgar, like online movie stuff, video stuff you could think of. I don't even need to go into detail about what I mean by that. And by the way, this was a girl claiming to be a virgin, which that was probably a flat out lie. But it's just become a very common occurrence. You know, most self-respecting men are going to see that and not want to play part in it. You shouldn't care about what people think anyway. You sure as heck shouldn't get into a relationship because of some pressure. Because again, I see a lot of that shaming too. Unfortunately, a lot of it coming from men of, oh, you haven't been with a girl in this long, this kind of stuff. I even overheard a conversation between two friends of mine who were around the age of 30 talking about when the last time they got with a woman, almost like using it as like a way to one up each other. I'm like, you guys realize this is not high school anymore. We're not in high school anymore, guys. Like grow up. Seriously. I see a lot of that. Just focus on your mission and purpose and grind. Don't be derailed by this kind of stuff. Again, people don't know what a normal, healthy friendship or relationship even looks like. They're doing things a lot of time out of insecurity. If they had self-respect, their friend circle would be a lot smaller. If they had self-respect, they might be single in some cases. You have a lot of girls doing things openly disrespecting men. Being caught on their phone, texting dudes. I've seen guys literally like, they know the girl's talking to other men and they just don't care. They sweep it under the rug. That's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. And you wonder why their relationships end ugly. The girl cheats on them or whatever. Just that loss of self-respect. That loss of self-respect. Like, I even had a friend of mine who really just, he got his whole life destroyed because he lost focus. He overlooked red flags and it's ruined him. And that's a situation I've seen many times. Many times. So you have to have good self-respect. You have to not compromise that just for these superficial things, guys.